So, as you probably guessed, today we're here to talk about whether or not it would be a good idea for the USFG to ban testing that requires use of animals. A couple definitions to get out of the way. The use of animals for testing can include cosmetic, medical experimentation. I'm going to be pretty broad, so whatever the opposition wants to say is good. I might most likely won't contest on a definitional basis, as long as it falls into the category of like what you conventionally think of when you think of animal testing. I'd like to define an animal as a living, non-human organism belonging to the kingdom Animalia. Okay, so the majority of my speech today is going to consist of why animal testing is harmful to animals and then why it's harmful to humans. So it's harmful to animals. It's pretty obvious the physical harm that they can go through, but it's still worth mentioning. Experimentation is oftentimes very painful for the animal, not to mention the ontological violation onto their body. They feel pain when we break their neck and cut into their skulls and refuse to give them anesthetic, and this is morally reprehensible. And animals are sentient beings, and saying it's okay to harm them because they're different than us is like saying that we can test on other groups of people because they have darker skin or don't look like us in some manner or another. To avoid this, we should adopt a standard that if they're sentient, that's the only characteristic they need for us to have a moral duty to like not use them and not take advantage of them. There's a slavery and a genocide that we are enacting onto them, and I think that this needs to stop. So the opposition here is kind of in a double bind. If animal subjects of medical testing can produce results applicable to humans, then they probably deserve the same ethical protection as humans. If they don't, then the tests performed on them are probably not useful. And so even if you don't care about animals, you'll still vote for the proposition because the harm that this speciesist mindset perpetuates onto the human race if even one animal is tested on, and I'll explain. So we perceive these animals as other because of their physical difference, and which is also the basis of otherization within the human community. So I think that speciesism is a root cause of most oppressions and identity-based violence, and only by fighting it can we fight the kind of logic of domination. We mark the others having difference, but when it comes to a group of humans, we give them animal traits to justify the harm that we want to do to them. When we first interacted with the natives, for example, we called them savages, a term that we reserved for animals because we wanted to compare them to something that it was okay to torture, and that was animals. Only by bringing animals up to the level we see ourselves at can we stop the harm that we do to them and stop the harm among humans. This binary between humans and animals extends to the binaries between different humans, resulting in unending genocide and colonialism. In the Wolf piece that I cite below, he quotes Spivak saying, "The great doctrines of identity and ethical universal in terms of which liberalism thought out its ethical programs, played history false because identity was disengaged from in terms of who was and who was not human. That's why all these projects, the justification of slavery as well as the justification of Christianization, seem to be all right because after all, these people had not graduated into humanhood, as it were." And the identity the traits that they identify as human are like traits that are missing for groups like the mentally handicapped and the elderly and infants and more because people take away like the human characteristic from certain minority groups, and the opposition the mindset that they're going to present leads to making them like acceptable targets for this kind of the torture that we do onto animals now. And so like the neg is in another double bind. Either it must admit that animals are less than human, in which he admits he or she that perpetuates this kind of species ideals, or they think that animals and humans are equal, but it's okay to test on them, which justifies not only experimentation on animals, but experimentation on like human minorities, like we saw in the Holocaust. And so animal testing isn't efficient. So because of the species bias money is sent to accepted animal testing that produces no results, and it trades off with like controversial programs. If you like want to look at the AIDS project, for example, Francione, who I also cite below, says that if the money spent on in vivo research were instead spent on public safety or public safe sex education campaigns, needle exchanges, condom distribution, the rate of new HIV cases would drop dramatically. So if we just like reprogram these funds, they would do a lot better. And there are alternatives like humans who electively undergo experimentations for pay and avoid the species mindset and allows individuals to be in control of their social mobility. And for experimentation that is too invasive on living organisms, human cadavers could be a good alternative. Thanks.